Hey guys, how's it going? This is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. I am back in San Marcos, Atitlan, one of my favorite places in the world. And well, it's the 30th of December today, so the year is almost over. I thought I'd make a video about some thoughts that have been in my mind for a couple of months now, and it all started kind of as a joke with a good buddy of mine. um, where I don't know, he made some kind of comment, and I said to him, your problem is that you have a lot of knowledge, but you have very little understanding. And it was just meant as a joke, but it got me into thinking how I've seen um, a lot of people around me and just people in general being uh, very consumed with the acquisition of hard skills, and also what we think of in the West as soft skills, in terms of are you able to communicate properly, connect with people, and so on. And yet how they lack some basic understanding of how to navigate life in general on a deeper level, if you will. And I was trying to put my finger on that, and it also came about through a friend of my dad's who's in his mid 60s or so, who's having trouble with his wife, and literally, I mean, this was a he's a retired high executive, very very good at his job, highly educated man, and yet completely at a loss when it comes to dealing with these kind of situations. And so rather than make a joke about it, as I did with my friend, my comment to my dad was at that point was, the problem is that a lot of people spend a lot of time educating themselves, but they spend very little time cultivating themselves. And if I look at some of the things that I've been trying to do myself in the past 2 or 3 years, it's been a lot of self cultivation. And so I thought I'd try to define it as best as I understand it today. And the last one of the pieces of the puzzle, maybe not the last, but as I see it today, a piece of the puzzle came into my mind yesterday as I was reading a book called The Way of the Shaman. It's all about how to be a shaman and these kind of things. But so I'll give it a go, and I try to define self cultivation along three main pillars, if you will. And the first pillar I would define as building for yourself a deep mythological or archetypal narrative about your life. Right. So this is the backbone, the story that you tell yourself of what life is all about, and what your life specifically is about. What gives it meaning? What drives it? What role you think you were born to play in this life? And the whole thing about playing a role is a slippery slope, of course, because if you become identified with that role, then you've become kind of this caricature, or this puppet that is pulled left and right by the role, as opposed to you driving the role. Um, but the way I see it, you must develop some kind of archetypal hero journey for yourself that is sort of the basis of how you see life. Why is it worth living? What you're here to do? What is your mission? What things you stand for? And it must be beyond the confines of a socially defined role, such as a manager, or the job that you do, or the whether you're the oldest of your siblings, or those kind of things. It has to be something that is much more primal. So a healthy archetypal narrative would then be, to me, one big pillar of what you want to develop as you are trying to cultivate yourself. So developing self cultivation. The second pillar, which I thought was also very, very big, is embodiment. So, and by the way, these are themes that I've been touching upon here on the channel, right? So it's nothing new, but I'm trying to start and distill what is it that this is all about. And so embodiment is the idea that once again in the West we are caught too much in our heads, so we live from the neck upwards. We value logic above bodily sensations and emotions. We think that everything can be solved in a linear problem solution type of way, and when we are operating in the world like that, we tend to forget that there's this entire part of our system called our body that is always there, that requires a lot of attention, and that as we integrate with it, it starts to become, well, we start to live a much more complete type of life, because when we live in a highly embodied type of way, it is as if we keep reminding our central nervous system that we have a body that needs to be fed and nourished. And so that's the top down dynamic. But the other way around works as well. So our body is feeding us with all kinds of input all the time, sensations and yeah, changes in the environment. I'm going to pause this for a second because there's a lot of noise here. All right, so some of the locals coming in for work this morning. Now, so this embodiment is enormously important. It is half the story, if you will. So if you live in your head, you're missing out on half the story, and you're disconnected from a huge part of your being. So this two-way communication between mind and body needs to be nourished every single day. And to strengthen that handshake is very important, and you start to develop also sensitivities that you never thought you could have. And so that would be the second pillar. As for the third pillar, I tried, it kind of clicked yesterday, as I said, and I'm trying to define it as broadly as possible. And I'll give you the background of how it came about. So the first time I sort of heard it being mentioned was in a some kind of podcast about the art of seduction. And the guy who was talking said something that I thought was very interesting. I mean, they talk about game, right? When they refer to seduction. And he said that a master of game is a master of his own state, his own emotional, or rather his own general state of being. And yesterday, when I was reading The Way of the Shaman, the author was describing how a shaman is a person who navigates between what he calls a general state of mind and a shamanic state of mind. And the shamanic state of mind is very, it's an altered state of mind, an altered state of consciousness, in which you are much more right brain and maybe even subconsciously led in how you perceive reality. So you perceive far more and in a very different way. But he was talking about how the shaman is able to navigate between those two states of mind at will. And that's what made him useful to the community as a healer and as some sort of advisor. Now, and then it clicked for me that state, defined in its broadest sense, is the ultimate thing that you want to cultivate. So I would say that would be the third pillar, and maybe maybe it's the highest part. So if the overarching archetypal narrative is at the bottom, and the embodiment is in the middle, then maybe state is at the top of the pyramid. Nothing to do with the body, by the way, because state is also in the body. But so if you're able to change state at will, then that's a very interesting indication of mastery or cultivation of the self. And in defining state, you can be very broad. So we're not only talking about mental state, right? We're talking about mental, emotional, and if you will, yeah, sensations in the body type of state, right? So somebody who is able to become highly aroused when the situation calls for that, such as in a dangerous situation, or if you are able to become extremely focused when you are trying to understand a particular problem or studying, for example, when you are able to be sort of carefree and spontaneous as you are bantering with your friends. If you are able to display even moderate or intense anger when the situation calls for that, and then 30 seconds later to a minute later being able to revert back to an absolutely stable and neutral stance. To me, that is almost ultimate power, if you will, because you are in essence able to drive your mind left and right from focused to just generally aware, to relaxed, to aroused as the situation calls for it. So you are in essence highly in tune with what's up, in a sense. And that's a very it's a very tough skill, because mental states and emotional states are kind of sticky, right? So what we tend to do in essence when it comes to state is, if your mind is overthinking, maybe you needed to think about something for a while, but then you end up sort of ruminating and overthinking the rest of the day. Or if you're angry about something, that sticky state just kind of escalates and it ends up causing more trouble. Maybe anger was due, but instead of reacting, you're overreacting. So to me, state would have been the third pillar, and so that's the conclusion that I've drawn after looking into some of these things is, well, first of all, cultivation is enormously important. It's to me the most important thing that you want to be looking into, because no matter how much education and knowledge and input you get, it's the wisdom that you develop through that counts at the end of the day. And again, I mean, there's practices that you can engage into, such as meditation, mindfulness, yoga, tai chi chuan, qigong, for example, or just plain bodily practices. Even massage can be incredibly helpful to become more embodied, for example. But to me, cultivation of the self is the journey in which you want to engage. And of course, your job and your family and all these worldly things, if you will, are going to help you in that, because they're going to throw challenges at you all the time that are going to help you gauge how embodied you are, how healthy your life narrative is, and whether you are able to drive your state of mind in the direction that you want. So I guess that is it for this video. Is the 30th of December. The year is almost over. I'm happy with the way this year went. There's been some challenges towards this last week of the year that I'll probably do a separate video about. But self-cultivation, very important, something to think about for 2020 and for the rest of your life, as a matter of fact. And the three pillars that I've defined for it, at least for myself, as I explore this very, very broad domain, is again a mythological or archetypal narrative for your life, being highly embodied, and the ability to manage your state at will. And state being defined as state of mind, state of body, state of emotions in the broadest possible sense. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope to bring you guys some cool content as the days go by. Cheers.